This tale is about Florence Nightingale, the compassionate woman who widely known as the founder of modern nursing. The story that follows is based on the events of her life. Once upon a time, in a far-off Italy, a young English couple were admiring their brand-new baby daughter. "Isn't she lovely?" Mrs. Nightingale said. "She is indeed," agreed Mr. Nightingale. "We, what should we name her?" "Well, it occurred to me, why not name her Florence?" Florence was the name of the city in Italy where their little girl was born. "A splendid idea!" cried her father. "Yes, Florence Nightingale sounds just right for her." One evening when Florence was almost a year old, her sister Penelope was 2. Mrs. Nightingale spoke thoughtfully to her husband. "I think we should go back to England," she said. "By now the Nightingales have been living in Italy for 3 years." "Aren't you happy here?" said Mr. Nightingale. "Yes, of course," replied his wife. "We've been wonderful, but the girls are growing up so fast. We must think of them and their future." "You're right," agreed Mr. Nightingale. "It's time we established ourselves in our own country." And so the Nightingales packed up their trunks and returned to their country estate in Devonshire, England. It was called Lea Hurst, and Mr. Nightingale had a fine new house built there for his family. "It's delightful!" exclaimed Mrs. Nightingale when she saw it. "And such a wonderful view! I shall be able to invite all my friends to visit and have marvelous parties." Mrs. Nightingale loved to have lots of people around. As Florence and Penelope were growing up, the house was always full of friends and relatives. They enjoyed the company, and Florence was especially happy when there were small children among the visitors. "Do let me take care of the little ones," she would beg. Then she would spend all her time looking after them, inventing games to amuse them and making sure they didn't hurt themselves. Among the children brought to visit the Nightingales, Florence was particular favorite of a little cousin named Robert. "Poor wee thing," said Florence to her sister as she bounced Robert on her knee. "Hardly anyone pays any attention to him except maybe to say what an ugly baby he is." "Well," observed Penelope, "it's true, isn't it?" "But that's no reason to love him less," protested Florence. "You see, Florence was a very compassionate little girl. She would never set misfortune without great pity, and wanted desperately to do something about it. It was the same with animals. If Florence heard that a horse was injured or a calf was sickly, she haunted the stable or barn doing whatever she could to help, and she was forever rescuing orphaned squirrels or wounded birds and caring for them until they could manage on their own. "I declare," said Mr. Nightingale one day when he came upon Florence and one of her special patrons, "I think you worry more about the sparrow than you do about your family." "But, father," Florence pointed out, "there is no need for me to worry about any of you. You are all strong and healthy." "Yes, of course," laughed her father, "but don't let your compassionate heart make you neglect your lessons." Mr. Nightingale himself looked after his daughters' education. He taught them Latin, Greek, French, Italy, history, philosophy, and mathematics. Florence was a keen student, but Penelope did not much enjoy the lessons. "I just don't see what we need to know all this," she grumbled. "I'd much rather be helping Mother arrange flowers for the party tonight." Florence simply couldn't understand it. She found arranging flowers very boring. When the girls were not busy studying, they often accompanied their mother on weekly visit to the cottages around Lea Hurst. Many poor people lived in these cottages, and Mrs. Nightingale took them food and other necessities. "It is our duty to help the less fortunate than ourselves," she would tell her daughters. Florence did not need to be told. The compassionate young heart ached to see the misery in which some of the cottagers lived. It just isn't fair that these people are so poor, she cried. I know, replied her mother, but we can do what we can for them, and we can't change the world. But Florence felt she could be doing more for the cottagers. As she grew older, she began visiting them on her own, especially those who were sick. She would tidy their rooms, rub their backs, make them tea or broth, and then sit quietly and talk to them for a while. When Florence, Where is Florence? Asked Mr. Nightingale as he sat down to dinner one evening while Florence was 16. Before anyone could answer, Florence herself came flying into the dining room. I'm very sorry I'm late. Old Granny Clarkson is very ill and she likes to have me sit with her. That's the third time this week, Florence, scolded her mother. Compassionate is all very well, but it can be carried too far. You have other obligations. I know I do, but it seems so little to do if it comforts her. Well, make sure you are on time tomorrow. We are having guests. Oh, not again, thought Florence. For some time now, she had been finding her mother's parties more and more pointless and tiresome. Do stop moping, Florence, and come and greet our guests, urged Mrs. Nightingale, as the first carriage pulled up to the door. What's wrong with you anyway? It's just that all seems like such a waste of time, mumbled her daughter. Nonsense, replied Mrs. Nightingale. With all those nice young men who think the world of you, what more could a girl your age want? Now, do stop being so critical and try to enjoy yourself like other young people. Come on, Florence, said Penelope. The music and the dancing will be so much fun, and the boys are so handsome. Florence sighed. There has to be more to life than these silly parties, she said to herself. But being a polite and considerate person, you went and greeted the guest with a smile. Dear me, thank goodness that's over, thought Florence as she snuggled into bed. I'm not sure I can take any more evenings like that. Oh, stop feeling sorry for yourself, Florence Nightingale, scolded a little voice. Florence sat bolted upright. Who's there? She cried. Just me, answered the voice. Florence looked around. The voice seemed to come from the lamp beside her bed. But lamps don't speak, she quivered. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, replied the lamp. How can you be so sure? Who are you? Demanded Florence. A friend. You may call me what you like. Florence thought for a moment. I know. I shall call you Lucy. Means light, so it's a perfect name for a lamp. But what are you doing here, Lucy? Well, you don't seem to be very happy with your life, and I thought I could use someone to talk to. Now Florence was sure the lamps don't speak, but she realized that she was imagining Lucy because she did indeed need someone to talk to. You're right, she admitted. I usually am, said Lucy airily. Now then, what are you going to do about your life? That's just the trouble, wailed Florence. I don't know what to do. I feel so useless. You help your mother, don't you? Suggested Lucy. I sort and count linens and china and silver. It's that's what you mean. It just makes things worse. How can reasonable people want all that stuff when so many other lives in such misery? I see your point, agreed Lucy. But do you see what you can see I can do about it? There's something you will have to decide for yourself. There's a very compassionate person, but you're still quite young. My advice is to keep looking around you to see what needs to be done. In time, you will think of ways to help people. I do hope you're right, sighed Florence. Twice every year the Nightingales spent several weeks in London. These times were particularly difficult for Florence. She was not allowed to wander around alone the way she could at Lea Hurst, and so there was seemed to be no way for her to do anything for those in need of help. "Did you see those children, Penelope, as she drove into town?" she said to her sister. "They look so sickly and hungry and cold. Did you see the filth, the garbage in the streets running down into the river, the people getting in the drinking water from?" "Of course I saw, Florence, but what point is there in thinking about such unpleasant things?" "I can't help it," said Florence. "Those people are no different than us except they have no money. They shouldn't have to live in such conditions." "I agree," replied Penelope, "but there really isn't much we can do for them." "Nonsense," said a little voice sternly. "I hope I never heard you talk like that, Florence. There's a lot a person with compassion and determination can do." "Oh, Lucy," whispered Florence, "I am so glad you're here." She glanced anxiously at Penelope, wondering what her sister might take of a talking lamp, but Florence was the only one that could see and hear her little friend. The days seemed an endless string of parties and gossiping visits. In preparation for more parties, Florence became very depressed. "Oh, do snap out of your bad mood," said her mother impatiently. "All you do is sit there and mope. Why can't you be more like your sister, enjoy the nice young people around you?" But Florence had no interest in the social world. She tried to explain to her mother that she needed to be doing something more worthwhile, but it did not go. Good. "What am I going to do, Lucy?" Florence whispered wearily to her friend. "Don't get too downhearted," answered Lucy. "You will know when it time comes." "I worried about Florence," said Mrs. Nightingale to her husband as they stayed in London near its end. "She seems to have no interest in anything." "I don't think that's completely true," replied Florence's father. "She's a good student and enjoys learning." "Yes, but a girl her age should be wanting to have fun too. Why don't we take her on a trip? We could go back to Italy. Maybe that will help her change her ideas." Mr. Nightingale thought for a while. "That is a good suggestion." And so the Nightingales went out to Italy. They crossed France in a large coach that Mr. Nightingale had designed himself. They had 6 attendants, and the coach was drawn by 3 pairs of horses. Florence kept careful notes on all the places they passed through, notes about distances and weather and laws and conditions in which people lived. She always enjoyed herself enormously. She loved the beautiful uh, uh, churches and the squares and palaces, and saw the wonderful concerts they heard. But of all she loved the city of Florence, where they went on splendid balls and met many very interesting people. Eventually, it was time to go back to England. Mrs. Nightingale was delighted with the way her idea had turned out. At last, Florence seemed to be behaving like other girls her age, but Florence had not really forgotten her concern for the poor and helpless of the world. As soon as she was back in Lea Hurst, Florence started visiting sick people in the village again. The evening when she would sit back and talk quietly to Lucy about their problems. "I can give them compassion, Lucy, and maybe make them a bit more comfortable. But that's not enough. I don't know what to do to make them well. If I only knew more." "Can't you learn?" asked Lucy. And suddenly it came to Florence. She knew what she had to do. "That's it, Lucy," she exclaimed. "I will learn. I will learn everything I do about hospitals and about diseases and injuries and how to treat each one. I'm going to become a nurse." "Oh dear," said Lucy. "What on earth will your family say?" Florence's family was shocked at the time. Nursing was not a respectable profession. "A daughter of mine doing nursing? Never!" cried her horrified mother. "Florence, you just can't be a nurse," shrieked her sister. "What would people say?" "Girls of your background don't do nursing," added her father more gently. "The conditions are appalling. You would not be able to stand it." Mrs. Nightingale plentifully became quite upset at the thought of it all. Arguments followed arguments. Months passed, and years. But Florence was determined. She bought books on medicine and studied them in her room at night. She had her friends on the continent send her reports to the hospitals and institutions of the poor in other countries. What is all that for? Cried Lucy, eyeing the mountains of paper surrounding Florence. Well, I have to know what it's going to on before I can do anything about it, Florence replied. I can't argue with that, said her friend. One day, Florence even persuaded a doctor friend of her father's to show her around a London hospital. She was horrified at what she saw. The conditions were dreadful. Patients were dirty and uncared for. The wards and beds were filthy. Rats running across the floor. There was not enough doctors to care for everyone. The nurses and attendants were almost as dirty as the patients. I can't understand why your patients are so set against your nursing, said Lucy. I am going to change all that, vowed Florence. She was more determined than ever to fulfill her dream and become a nurse and make nursing a respectable job. Florence knew she was still had much more to learn about nursing. I believe they are making great improvements in hospitals in other countries, said Lucy one day. Why don't you accept some of those invitations from friends who want you to visit them abroad? You might be able to visit some hospitals while you are at it and study how they are run. Lucy, what a splendid idea, cried Florence. And if I just don't mention hospitals to my mother, she won't even worry about me. Indeed, Mrs. Nightingale remembered how well the earlier trip had worked in distant Florence, was quite happy to send her daughter off to a new round of visits. Florence traveled around France and Germany and Ireland. Everywhere she went, she visited hospitals and learned everything she could about them. She took notes on how they were organized and furnished, and how the patients were treated and what they were fed. By the time Florence returned home, she was an expert on hospitals and how they should be run. Florence's parents were still very opposed to her nursing in a hospital in London, however. In those days, when well-to-do people were sick, they were cared for by their own homes. Only the poor went to hospital. Mrs. Nightingale could not bear the idea of her daughter working among such people. I absolutely refuse, she said flatly, every time Florence returned to the subject. A girl of your upbringing does not do that sort of thing. Anyway, your aunt is ill, she added. Since you are so keen to nurse, I suggest you go and nurse her. Florence did not like upsetting her parents, so she went to nurse her aunt. I am certainly happy to do what I can from Aunt Comfort, but I feel there are people out there who need me far more. Her little friend understood how Florence felt. Give it some time, she said. Maybe your parents will change their minds. Lucy knew this was unlikely, but she wanted to keep Florence's spirits up. Then, a short time later, something happened that allowed Florence to take things into her own hands. Can you guess what it was? Florence was offered a job. She was asked to take over a superintendent of a small London hospital. It was a special hospital for sick women of good background who had no families to care for them. Florence's task was to be completely reorganized in new quarters. There will be a great deal to do, Lucy, said Florence. I know, replied Lucy, but you will love doing it. Once again, Lucy was right. Florence threw herself into the job. She organized beds, carpets, curtains, pots and pans. And most important thing is that the hospital was clean and comfortable, and the patients that they felt loved and cared for, said Florence. Her biggest problem was finding good nurses. There did not seem to be any who were properly trained, so Florence undertook to train them herself. She set strict rules, sent away anyone who would not follow them. At the same time, she showed the same compassion for her nurses as she did for her parents, or as she did for her patients. She listened to their problems and saw to it that they were well and fairly treated, and responded by doing their work well and carefully. Soon Florence had the best run hospital in England. People began coming to study her methods of nursing, sanitation, hospital organization. Ah, Lucy, said Florence joyfully, at last I am doing what I want. About a year after Florence started nursing in London, Britain became involved in a war against Russia. Turkey, Britain, and France wanted to stop Russia from taking some land belonging to Turkey. The land was called Crimea. The British fought some terrible battles there against the Russians. Many men were killed and many more were wounded. Soon the London newspapers were full of stories about terrible conditions. Wounded sick soldiers in Crimea were suffering. The public began to demand something be done to get proper care for these brave men. Reports from the battlefield are dreadful, Florence, said Mr. Sidney Herbert. Men are dying by the hundreds from lack of proper food, clothing, and medical care. Mr. Herbert, the Secretary of War and one of Florence's oldest friends. Something has to be done, he added, showing her sketches that were made of the hospital conditions. Florence was horrified when she saw them. I know I'm asking a lot, Florence, but I want you to get together a group of nurses and go to Camera and organize proper care for the sick and wounded. Needless to say, Florence agreed to go. Florence knew this was not going to be easy, but she welcomed the challenge. Come on, Lucy. We have a lot to do, and the sooner we are on our way, the better, she said briskly. Florence immediately set about organizing what needed for the journey. The biggest task was finding competent and compassionate nurses to come with us. There aren't too many of those around, remarked Lucy. Eventually, Florence managed to recruit 38 nurses, some of them nuns. Together, they set out for the long journey to Camera. At last, Florence and the nurses arrived at the British hospital at Courtrai. They were shocked at what they saw. Oh, ma'am, look at what they call a hospital, cried one of the nurses. They don't even have proper wards. The men are just lying in the corridors. They were long, windy old corridors with rats running around. There were no running water or heat. Rain leaked through the roof. The Crimea where the actual war was taking place was across the Black Sea, Sutari, and the conditions in which the British soldiers were fighting there would hardly have been worse. Could hardly have been worse. There were very few supplies. When winter came and the bitter cold, the men did not have enough blankets or food. They were fighting without coats or boots in freezing weather. Many were dying from exhaustion. Those who survived were very weak. The wounded arrived by the hundreds at Sakuri. They've been further weakened by those with boats across the trip of the Black Sea. When they were left in the hospital, there were nowhere to put them except on the floor. There were not enough doctors to take care of them all. Many died before anyone got around to attending them. In spite of the desperate shortage of staff, the doctors and officials did not trust Florence and would not listen to her. They did not like the idea of women in army hospitals, and they refused to let Florence or the nurses help with the wounded. What are you going to do, Miss Nightingale? Asked one of the nurses. We can't just stand around and watch these poor men suffer. Nor will we, replied Florence firmly. For the moment there is nothing we can do about the men's wounds, but there is certainly something we can do about the place. Come on, ladies, let's get to work. And they did. They scrubbed the floors, they collected straw and made beds for the sick and wounded. They rolled bandages and made splints and set up their own kitchen where they prepared the kind of food sick men could digest. Still, the doctors refused to let Florence nurses tend the wounded until one day 500 unexpected casualties arrived at once. You must let us help you with the men, Florence urged the doctors. Reluctantly, they agreed. They quickly realized that Florence knew what she was doing. They came to rely more and more on her, and soon she organized the whole place. She had changed in the kitchen, arranged for better sanitation and more efficient distribution of supplies. But above all, Florence saw to it that the men were properly looked after. They were washed and given clean clothes, and their injuries were taken care of. Every night, Florence would walk through the wards with her lamp. "Come over and talk to me," one soldier after another would cry as she passed. Florence had a word for all of them. For the first time, the soldiers felt taken care of. They looked forward to seeing her quietly checking out her patients. They called her the lady with the lamp. Several times, newspapers reporters stopped at Sakari on the way to or from Camira Front. On one of the very famous journalists called William Howard Russell from the London Times. "Conditions are not good, Miss Nightingale," he said. "I know," replied Florence, "but my nurses and I are doing the best we can. You seem to be the only one who are. The other hospitals I've seen are far, far worse." William Howard Russell reported back to London on the dreadful conditions in the army hospitals. He also told how Florence Nightingale was the only one doing something about it. As a result of his stories, Florence was soon famous throughout London. "Lucy," Florence said to her friend one day, "I keep hearing about hospitals where conditions are even worse than here. I think I should travel around and see them. There may be something I can do." Lucy agreed. "Your nurses are doing well. Trained, they can look after things here for a while." So Florence crossed the sea to Camira, and the conditions in the hospital were indeed very bad. She gave advice on how things could be improved, but before she could see the work through, something very sad happened. Suddenly, Florence felt very ill. "I don't think she's going to live," said one doctor. "We just can't let her die," replied another. "What are we going to do about her?" When the men in the hospital heard Florence's illness, they were very upset. They had come to love the beautiful, compassionate lady. As the news spread, British soldiers everywhere prayed for her recovery. "Come on, Florence," whispered Lucy. "You must get well. So many people need you." But Florence was so sick she could hardly hear her friend. For many days Florence hovered on the edge of death, but her will to live was very strong. Finally the fever broke, and slowly she began to recover. Everybody was very happy when she was well again. As soon as she was strong enough, Florence was back at work. She supervised the hospital and did her rounds, making sure the soldiers were as comfortable as possible. She had her nurses write letters home for them and provide books and newspapers to help distract them. She made sure that their uniforms and nightshirts were clean and that their wounds were properly taken care of. Before the war was over, many men owed their lives to Florence's care and compassion. Finally, the war came to an end, but Florence's work was not finished. On the boat back to England, she took care of the wounded. "Florence, you must get some rest," said Lucy, alarmed at how thin and pale Florence was. "Once I get home I will rest," replied Florence. "These men need to be cared for." Many people in England wanted to give Florence a hero's welcome, but she would not hear of it. "All I want to do is get home to Lea Hurst and my family," she told Lucy. When Florence arrived at Lea Hurst, her parents were shocked at the change in her. "You are so thin," cried her mother. "You look so weak and tired." "I'll sit in the sunshine and rest," said Florence. After a few days, Florence felt better. Soon she was fretting to get back to work. There was still so much to be done. Artists had painted many pictures of Florence making her rounds with her lamp, and the sculptors had made statues of her. When she returned to London, she was amazed to discover that people recognized her wherever she went. "Miss Nightingale, this is my little daughter," women would say. "I have named her after you." Everybody was talking about the wonderful, compassionate lady who had taken care of the soldiers in the war. Another surprise was waiting for Florence. A fund had been set up in her honor. Many of the soldiers had her nurse contributions to it, and the fund eventually amounted to a great deal of money. Florence was ecstatic. "Now I can open a real school for nursing, Lucy," she said. "A school where young girls can be taught about sanitation and training to properly nursing methods." She decided to set up the Nightingale Training School at St. Thomas Hospital in London. St. Thomas is still one of the most famous nursing schools in England today. Queen Victoria of England had heard so much about Florence that she wanted to meet her. "Miss Nightingale, it is an honor to meet such a compassionate person," said the Queen. "You have done wonderful work." "Thank you, Your Majesty," replied Florence, "but there is so much more that needs to be done. I am sure you agree that the health of your army is very important." Queen Victoria did agree. Yet, even in peacetime, Florence continued, "the death rate among soldiers is higher than the general population. That must change." "I will help you in any way I can," promised the Queen. Florence worked very hard. She collected mountains of information on conditions on which soldiers lived. She wrote hundreds of letters and spent hours and hours talking to officials. "Oh, Lucy, sometimes I get so tired," she said, "I can hardly stand up." "I'm afraid your illness in the Chimera had a lasting effect on your health," said her friend. Sadly, Lucy was right again. Soon Florence had to spend most of her time lying down, but this did not stop her. She simply did her work from her bed. After many years of hard work, Florence saw great results. Army barracks were less crowded, better ventilated, and provided with reading rooms, and the men were fed better. The health of the soldiers improved. In India, where the death rate among British soldiers was practically high, Florence suggested improvements in sanitation. Soon the death rate dropped. It was now considered respectable for young women to do nursing. Hospitals became clean and cheerful places, and the people got better more quickly. Many nurses trained in the Nightingale method went abroad and worked in hospitals. They were always very welcome because of their superior nursing skills and compassion. Even though Florence was an invalid for many years, she always kept in touch with her nurses. Florence was 90 when she died. The whole world mourned with this extraordinary, compassionate woman. Through her caring and compassion, Florence Nightingale changed a great many lives. Ordinary soldiers were treated decently, lived longer, healthier lives. Hospitals no longer were places one went to die, but to get better. Nursing became an honorable profession that it is today, all thanks to a beautiful lady with a lamp.